Good day to the members of the media, the listening public. I thank you for your attendance and for watching this press conference. Like so many other countries, Bermuda continues to shake off the effects of the last 2 years of radical changes in travel created by the global pandemic. In the wake of the pandemic, a perfect storm has arisen of economic challenges related to impacts of the war in Ukraine and global supply challenges. These global conditions have adversely affected tourism the world over, with even those destinations realizing growth, in some cases not yet at pre-pandemic levels. Against this background, Bermuda has survived, and hoteliers, restaurant owners, and operators of tourism attractions have weathered an incredible storm. As outlined in last Friday's throne speech, the government's role to provide the legislation that will support a tourism recovery, that is the government's role. I take this opportunity to echo the Premier's remarks on Monday about competitiveness. The tourism market is a loud and demanding series of appeals to investors and visitors. To attract one, we must have the other. The Bermuda Tourism Authority is designed to attract visitors, and the government must provide a basis on which to attract investors. The amendments that will be made to the Tourism Investment Act 2017 will provide the minister responsible for tourism with the discretion to apply a formula for the grant of relief that matches the economic importance of the investment in our tourism product. Not every development will need 15 years of relief from the various taxes, but where it does, there must be a more efficient means to grant it than requiring special acts of the legislature. We must demonstrate that we are serious about attracting investment and serious about creating a tourism product in accommodation, restaurants, and attractions that justify the price point that we demand. The interest is there. We must cultivate it and bring it to reality. In the coming weeks, I will be finalizing the detail of the policy that will underpin the legislative amendments. And following the approval of the Cabinet, we'll bring the amendments to the House. As the government continues to review public access to information legislation, this ministry will begin a phased implementation of the Personal Information Protection Act 2016 during the coming year. Both acts will be aligned to ensure greater efficiencies in public information. This work will be supported by a more robust cybersecurity framework, improving the protection of public information from the ever-increasing cyber attacks threat. The purpose of the PADI legislation, which has been enforced since 2015, is to foster transparency and understanding of the structure, operations, and decision-making that goes on in public authorities. PADI aids in making public authorities more accountable and removes the unnecessary perceived secrecy in their operations. PADI encourages more information to be placed into the public domain as a matter of course, which aligns well with many other initiatives that increase ease of accessibility to information. The purpose of PIPA is to protect an individual's privacy rights and freedoms when their personal information is used by others. All organizations in Bermuda, including the government, must observe these privacy rights. The only sections of PIPA that are currently enforced relate to the recruitment and setup of the Privacy Commissioner's Office. The rest of PIPA will come into force on the dates as determined by the Minister in consultation with the Privacy Commissioner. In terms of harmonizing the PETI and PIPA legislation, when PIPA is fully enforced, all matters relating to one's own personal information are governed by PIPA. Therefore, the personal information provisions currently contained in PETI and the PETI regulations will be removed or changed so that the two pieces of legislation are more harmonious and synchronized. For example, PETI currently includes a definition for personal information and allows individuals to access and amend their personal information that is held by the government and public authorities. Once PIPA is enforced, individuals would access and amend their own personal information via PIPA, and the PETI Act will be amended accordingly. The definition of personal information in PETI will be changed to follow the PIPA definition. This is only one example of where amendments are necessary in order to ensure that both acts are aligned. Another example of alignment of the two acts is the removal of several sections of the PETI regulations relating to requests and amendments of personal information. As mentioned in the throne speech, the government is in the process of modernizing Bermuda's legislative framework governing intellectual property rights. This substantial project is being undertaken through the collaborative efforts of the Ministry for the Cabinet Office, Department of Registry General within the Ministry of Home Affairs, and the Economic Development Department within the Ministry of Economy and Labor. The intended outcome is for Bermuda's intellectual property framework to be more fully aligned with global best practices and international standards. Requests for updates to the IP framework have been made by industry practitioners on several occasions over the years, with more recent calls being made following the introduction of fintech legislation and economic substance requirements. In response to these requests, an intellectual property task force was impaneled by the government, and a report of recommended actions was produced, which outlined the need to update the suite of intellectual property legislation. Consistent with the recommendations of the task force, overhauls of both the Trademarks Act 1994 and the Patents and Design Act 1930, and updates to the Copyrights and Design Act 2004 are currently in progress. Modernization of the trademarks legislation is entering the final stages of consultation, which will include reviews by industry practitioners as well as the United Kingdom's Intellectual Property Office and the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office. Work on modernizing the patent legislation has also begun, and that legislation will follow the same course. The updated suite of laws and regulations will be modeled after the United Kingdom's legislation to ensure that it is appropriately positioned to have various international treaties extended to Bermuda. Increased registrations from global market participants, increased government revenues, updated and more efficient administrative practices and processes, and access to well-established case law in the United Kingdom are also benefits that are anticipated to result from this modernization project. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Good afternoon to members of the media and the listening public. I am pleased to stand before you today to share the work that the Ministry of Economy and Labor will carry out over the upcoming parliamentary session. The Ministry will work to further enhance the quality of life for many Bermudian families by expanding social protections and advancing workers' rights. Following the 2022 speech from the throne, the Ministry of Economy and Labor will focus on executing the following initiatives: implementing a minimum wage, creating a Department of Labor, expanding the child daycare allowance, and continuing the financial assistance reform. After fulsome research and consultation, the ministry will proceed with implementing Bermuda's first statutory minimum wage. This is a major step in ensuring that Bermudians receive a fair day's wage for a fair day's work. The creation of a labor department will enhance the services available to employees and employers, which will promote employee protections and fair practices within the workplace. The ministry will progress the reform to financial assistance, increasing access to child daycare benefits, and make further changes to the financial assistance regulation with an aim to provide additional support to individuals and families facing financial hardship. Each of these initiatives aim to further protect and support Bermudians and reflects the government's human-centered approach to economic recovery. The implementation of a minimum wage reflects the social justice ethos of the Progressive Labour Party government, ensuring that a fair day's wage is paid for a fair day's work. It is crucial, now more than ever, to establish a minimum wage to ensure that all segments of our society have access to their basic needs. It is this government's promise to provide social protections to all Bermudans. Establishing a comprehensive minimum wage is fundamental to ensuring that we progress as a just and equitable society. And so, designed to be a statutory wage floor, it is proposed that Bermuda's minimum wage will be set at $16.40, which will be considered one of the highest in the world. The implementation of a minimum wage will provide a greater level of financial security for persons across many job categories, including hospitality, barbers and hairdressers, caregivers, clerks, and cleaners. This change will improve the lives of many workers, especially those within occupations with traditionally low levels of remuneration. As we collectively strive to reduce inequalities that exist within our society, I thank the Wage Commission, employers, and key stakeholder groups who have supported the process of establishing a statutory minimum wage rate. Bermuda's workers have an economic foundation that drives success of businesses and the delivery of various vital services. Workers must be protected, and industrial relations within the economy will be enhanced by certainty and understanding the rights and responsibilities of all parties. The government will advance a bill to create a Department of Labor, giving statutory authority to posts within the department to ensure workers' rights are protected and provide employers with adequate guidance on Bermuda's labor legislation. The department will be responsible for the promotion of labor standards and fundamental rights at work, ensuring sound labor relations, compliance, monitoring, and enforcement of labor laws, and advancing labor policy. In the upcoming months, we will continue with financial assistance reform initiatives to ensure that we have social protections that will guarantee that all families, regardless of their current economic standing, have access to resources which will allow them to meet their basic needs. As we progress financial assistance reform, it is our goal to empower able-bodied individuals finding themselves unemployed or facing financial hardship to receive the help that is required financially, while also working towards gainful employment opportunities. The aim is to shift the perception of financial assistance from being a handout to a hand-up. To that end, the ministry will progress the following reform items, which include promoting the financial stability of individuals and families by amending the asset and income criteria to allow those receiving financial aid to hold or receive gifts up to $2,500 and hold savings or investments up to $5,000. Amend the child support rules to allow FA recipients to retain 50% of child support received to help cover child-related expenses, enhance the incentives to work program to help clients see a raise in their standard of living when they have a job or increase the numbers of hours worked. The increasing cost of childcare has added to the economic stress for parents. As a result, the ministry will increase the child care allowance benefits and expand the pool of parents who can qualify. These amendments will provide many families the opportunity to afford suitable child care for their children. Ensuring families have access to child care is extremely important as it gives children the opportunity to develop the social, emotional, and cognitive skills required to prepare for primary school and beyond. Building blocks will be an element of financial assistance reform which will assist households requiring immediate assistance with expenses for a short period of time. Sudden hardships occur in life, like redundancy or a change in household composition due to tragic circumstances. In these instances, financial assistance can be provided to meet the short-term needs of a household. In addition, changes will be made to the schedule of allowable expenses to better reflect the actual cost of goods and services for which assistance is provided. As it has been demonstrated since this government was elected in 2017, we remain committed to the progress of our people and this island we all call home. The initiatives featured in the Durham speech will further strengthen our economy and labor force. As we implement these initiatives over the next year, I ask that we all continue to work together to help ensure a better Bermuda for us all. Thank you, and at this time, I will take questions from members of the media.
Thank you, Minister Hayward and Minister Campbell. We'll begin the question session with questions for Minister Hayward, followed then by questions for Minister Campbell.
Thank you, Minister Hayward. Gary Foster Skelton, Bermuda Broadcasting. Just to get some clarification on that minimum wage, $16.40 per hour. What about the proposal for hospitality for those getting on commission or gratuities? Has that number been settled, or is that across the board, $16.40?
$16.40 will be across the board. We've had extensive consultation with the restaurants and the hotel sector. What we determined is that their income, individuals in those particular occupational categories, their income is based off of base wage plus service charges and gratuities. A large portion of their income is actually gratuities and service charge. As a result, we'll accept a combination of service charges and gratuities, which is collected by the employer, plus the base wage to form the $16.40 minimum wage rate.
So will that, essentially you're saying that the employer has to ensure that they're getting a base wage plus gratuities, which come to equivalent to $16.40 an hour? Correct.
And if gratuities and the base wage do not add up to $16.40, the employer will be responsible for ensuring that $16.40 is paid.
Thank you for clarifying that, Minister. Now, as Minister of Economic Development, what do you say to those who criticise this throne speech for having little solid reference to foreign investment or economic growth?
I would say this lays out our legislative agenda. This doesn't lay out the full suite of work we're doing in that particular area. And so when I give my economic update in a few weeks, I'll outline the work that is being done by BDA, the work that has been done by EDD, and the work that is also continually being done by BEDC to ensure that we have retention of our local business, but also expansion in the form of inward investment into Bermuda.
Okay, so we'll await that as a combination with these initiatives. But when it comes to this creation of a Department of Labour, will this be a new set of government jobs or people pulled from other departments?
This will be a newly created department. Right now is a labor relations section. the department will expand and we will go through the normal recruitment process.
So, how many more jobs are you expecting in government?
Certainly, I can talk about we will have a full composition of what our department looks like. But outside of right now, we have a labor relations section, which is run by a labor relations manager and has labor relations officers. We also want to ensure that we have inspection officers in place. We'd have to properly suit a director within a department, that is a normal role within a department framework, and also look to see whether or not we can get a labor economist on board as well.
Okay. And is this essentially going to increase the size of government and therefore the taxpayer burden?
No, the process that government currently uses, it utilizes PIDs from current posts, which are unfunded, to expend posts in other areas. So it's a one-for-one switch, so the total complement of government employees does not increase.
Thank you. What is lacking in the current government structure that you need to address it with this new department? And are unions and other legislation not sufficiently protecting workers?
I think if you want to be proactive, when you put measures in place such as a minimum wage, we want to ensure that you have officers in place that ensure that employers are enforcing the regulations. We just done a full suite of changes to our labor code, and we've increased benefits across the board. We want to ensure that employers and employees are adhering to the standards within our labor code, and we want to ensure that we have a proper department in place that can focus on those core things, which is promotion of labor standards, which is the enforcement and monitoring, and also the development of labor policy.
Okay. Now, you just made a reference to that minimum wage. How do you have statistics estimates on how many people are currently earning less than that $16.40 an hour?
Certainly, in the report that we set out, we had produced in terms of the position paper. The position paper had occupational categories associated with it with a median income. We can make a rough estimation that based off the median income, 50% of the persons in those occupational categories make less than the minimum wage rate proposed, but it will be certainly a rough estimate.
And do you have that rough estimate of how many people right now?
No, I don't have that number.
We'd have to look at that. Okay. BIU President Chris Ferbert did hint that the boat sailed on a minimum wage years ago, and a livable wage rather than a minimum wage should be considered due to the cost of living. Do you really expect the minimum wage at the rate you are setting to make a major difference, and if so, where?
It will make a difference, and having conversation with various employer groups, certainly there are employees that make underneath the prescribed statutory minimum wage rate that we will set. It does make a difference because now it creates a benchmark and standard, something that we can continue to monitor over the future periods, and also something that we can adjust. But I am confident that this will improve the take-home pay of a good portion of workers.
Referring to something from last year's throne speech, it was said that the BEDC would lead a mortgage and loan assistance program to help faith communities in the third sector. We will liaise. The BEDC said they were liaising with the banks to gain insight into the percentage of their loan portfolios allocated to the third sector, faith organisations, and how they interact with these clients. However, they indicated that resources were being redirected for the BEDC to progress priority economic recovery plan projects. Is there an urgent demand? Can you give us an update on that plan from last year? Has it changed? Is there an urgent demand for mortgage relief or loan relief within the third sector or faith communities?
I can't speak to the demand that's out there, but what I can speak to is the work that the BEDC is currently doing to support small and medium-sized enterprises, as well as progress the initiatives which were in the Economic Recovery Plan. And so the Bermuda Economic Development Corporation has been doing a stellar job as it pertains to supporting our local entrepreneurs, providing relief where possible to small businesses which lie within the EEZ, the placing incubator hubs in the economic empowerment zones, running both incubator and accelerator programs, as well as ensuring that we support greater levels of development within the EEZ areas.
Okay. My final couple of questions would be on the subject of vertical farming. Farmers in Bermuda say they have not been involved in consultations for this project. Is that the case, and if so, why?
On this particular project, there haven't been a heavy level of farmer engagement, but it's not fair to say farmers have not been engaged on the project. And while I'll say that is because farmers would have been one of the first groups the BEDC would have met with to talk about development of a cooperative that will do similar activities as the vertical farm. There was no uptake from our local farmers as it pertains to that particular initiative. And so BEDC, along with a foreign partner, determined that this was a project that they wanted to embark on. And as a result of that, we will continue with progressing the plans of having a large-scale vertical farm. There are vertical farms in Bermuda currently on a smaller scale, but this will be the first large-scale vertical farm. And we want to have a more robust strategy as to how we better use technology to improve agricultural production. And we can't have that strategy will not be effective if we do not liaise with our stakeholders, which is the farming community.
One concern cited by farmers is the cost to operate a development of this type, lights, water, supplies, etc., meaning operating costs are too high to make the venture profitable. How do you respond to these concerns? Are you planning for facilities to receive concessions, tax rebates?
Certainly the government will work with the vertical farming company which is formed to ensure that the operation is financially viable to expand. The same way we will work with our local farmers to ensure that we support them in their ventures as well. And so I don't think that those persons have done a critical analysis of this project to determine that it won't be financially viable.
Okay, but Calera, the company you've chosen to partner with, has seen a share drop of 68% and recently a large number of crates of lettuce recalled. Why are you partnering with a company that appears to be volatile?
I believe that the board of BEDC done an assessment whether or not this company was a good company to partner with. They also got an independent assessment done as it pertained to the viability of the project, and they provided a recommendation to the minister to say that this is a project that they are willing to support.
Okay, so that the buck stops with the BEDC on they presented that to you.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Minister.
Good afternoon.
I just have a couple myself. I guess piggybacking on what Gary just asked you about regarding vertical farming. So a company has been formed, you said? Is there a deal, there's a contract signed with Calera?
I did not say that.
Sorry, I guess where are we at with that? I mean, there have been some statements that it was going to be going ahead quite soon, both from Mr. Burton and yourself. Is there a contract signed?
What type of contract?
For vertical farming?
I don't understand the question.
Is there a contract signed with a company to
Between
move ahead?
whom and whom? Who would sign the contract? Has the government signed a contract with a company? That's what you're asking?
I guess, yeah.
The
I mean,
answer to
is
that
there a company signed on to go ahead with vertical farming?
I don't think you understand the nature of the project. And so the BEDC will partner with a firm to produce a company that will operate in Bermuda. The shareholders of that company will be both BEDC and the overseas firm. Are you asking whether or not BDC and the firm has came to an agreement, or are you asking whether or not the
I guess I
minister
am, so, yeah,
has
I just-
improved,
Yeah.
has approved a project? What I would say is the minister has received a recommendation to go ahead with the formation of move forward with the formation of a local company, which the shareholders will be BEDC and Calara.
Do we know at all when that might be happening, the formation of the local company?
We don't have exact timing around that, but that matter is certainly progressing.
I guess a last one for that. I've been curious about this. Just what are the long-term plans in terms of the vertical farm? Can you elaborate on that at all?
So we do have long-term plans as to how we will better utilize technology to increase local food production. The vertical farm is one element of an overall strategy that we will develop. The Ministry of Economy and Labor and the Ministry of Home Affairs will work together with our local farmers and local food producers to ensure that we have a robust strategy which better speaks to how we can support our local farming community, better speak to how we can integrate technology into our processes to have greater production outcomes. And vertical farming is merely one piece of that particular puzzle.
Got it, sir, and thank you for that. Appreciate you. I wanted to get updates, if possible, on these 4 planks of economic recovery. I guess wanted to start with the development of Northeast Hamilton and just where we're at with anything happening in that.
So in terms of Northeast Hamilton, we do now have a hub. The BEDC opened up a hub. That hub will be responsible for housing small businesses and will act as an incubator. It will also act as the primary office for the residential scheme program that we're running. And so they will liaise with potential investors and potential property owners to determine whether or not we can have greater levels of activity in terms of development in that area.
Speak on the residential component. Are you able to say at this stage, I know it's a bit early, but what that might look at? Are we looking at apartment blocks or?
So we did publish guidelines. The guidelines will be specific to the neighborhood that the development will be in. But yes, we are looking at an expansion of housing in the Northeast Hamilton area.
Got you. In terms of the creation of a casino industry, it's been a while since we've heard any updates on it. Just anything that's happening there. We know St. Regis has a license, but they still haven't opened. As I gathered, there's still some legal hurdles to get over. I guess, yeah, any update on the casino industry?
I would say you would have heard the announcement where the first license was granted. What we're doing at the ministry level is having meaningful discussion with facilitators of training and development to ensure that we can upskill individuals to take advantage of whatever jobs exist in that area.
Righto. Tynes Bay was another one, and we heard from Colonel Birch on Tynes Bay that it needs some work. Yeah, just an update on that if possible. And I guess a bit on why that, maybe a dumb question, but why that's part of the economic stimulus plan.
So in the short term times, the work that will be done in Tynes Bay is for the maintenance of the particular facility so we can expand the current life of it. But then a master plan will be developed as to how we better utilize that facility. That facility will also be used for sewage and water production as well. And so that's why it will be looked at as a key economic hub, because the utilization of the particular facility will be expanded, and it will mean that there will be large levels of capital investment and expansion of jobs in that area.
Got you. The last one was the fish processing plant. Is there any update on that? I think the last talk I heard was potentially we were looking at dockyard, but it was some time back. Just, yeah, any update on that?
And on that particular initiative, we continue to have dialogue with the fishermen. We would like to have a large-scale fish processing facility, but what we need to do is have the fishing community on board so that it can be successful.
couple months ago, the Employment Tribunal put out a load of its decisions, but there were offending companies didn't get named in that. That was back in September. Wanted to ask just what the reason was for that. You know, when you see these things, you want to know who it is. Obviously, nobody likes getting named and shamed, but yeah, I just wanted to know what the reason was for not naming the companies.
I believe the legislation speaks to the minister receiving redacted versions of those particular reports, and I think that's what we actually published. The redacted versions of those reports.
They were already redacted when you got them.
Correct. That's what the legislation says, that the minister will receive redacted versions.
Okay, just quickly, sir. We had some sharp words from the opposition lately on the releasing of inflation figures. It was until after the throne speech. They cried foul on that one. I mean, did they have a point? Was there a delay? I figured it would be a chance to answer to that one. The question why the inflation figures came out after the speech had been given.
I don't buy into any notion that we craftily put out inflation figures after the throne speech to hide the inflation figures that are now in the public domain and everyone has access to.
Okay. Lastly here, back in June, you said that youth unemployment was, I believe, above 30%.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have a recent figure on where we are at with young people in unemployment?
The Department of Statistics will be running a labor force survey, and once that survey is complete, we would have more up-to-date figures in terms of not just youth unemployment, but unemployment rates across the island.
Do we expect that soon, or end of the year, or anything like that?
I would say the work on that particular survey has commenced, so they would still need time to tabulate the data and conduct the exercise in earnest, but that work has commenced.
Got it. Thank you, sir.
Hi, Minister. Sorry for the overlap. Just wanted to ask one question that came to mind whilst you were talking. I guess a couple months ago, the ministry produced a report based on the OECD countries, and it found that Bermuda needs about 1,500 new workers in the workforce in the next 4 years, or else we won't be able to sustain our population. There wasn't any mention of any immigration policy changes in the throne speech. I wondered, what is being done to boost our population.
And so what we're going to do is we're going to create implementation strategy as to how we can best achieve increase in our working population. But this is not something that happens overnight. We want to do extensive consultation with all stakeholders within our community. Once that consultation has completed, we will produce an implementation report that will map out the strategy as to how we achieve those aims.
And that process has begun?
We are currently mapping the plan as to the stakeholders who will be meeting, the level of dialogue that needs to be had with each stakeholders, doing overseas research to see what is done in other jurisdictions, with those jurisdictions also grappling with an aging population, and then we're going to do part 2 of our position paper, which will be the implementation strategy and would have the initiatives that we'll be embarked on over the years to come.
Sure. And are there any short-term changes that can be made at this time?
I'm sure there are some low-lying fruit that will come out of the consultation, and those ones that can be implemented in a quick manner, we will do so.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. We'll now take questions for Minister Campbell.
Thank you. Afternoon, Minister.
Good afternoon.
Thanks for having us. I wanted to ask about, you touched on this, the discretionary powers that came up in the throne speech. I guess tell us about why, if you could, why it's necessary and what sort of extra concessions are we looking at? You made it sound like it would be kind of a case-by-case basis, but...
Well, we currently, anything more than 10 years under the Act prescribes 10 years maximum.
Yeah.
So if we are to offer anything other than 10 years, it would have to be a special act. We're trying to avoid that by amending the Tourism Investment Act 2017, and and that would avoid having special acts because things will be more consistent, and we're looking at amending it whereby a maximum amount will be 15 years, and there will be discretion in there for the minister under advisement by the BDA to offer something in between 10 and 15 years if it's going to exceed the current prescribed maximum under the Act.
Righto. So does that mean that it won't be going before the House? It won't go before
It
legislature?
will still go before the House of Assembly. Any tourism act investment order, now has to go before the House, and that will continue to be the process.
And there will be, I guess, prior consultation happening before things of this nature?
What do you mean by prior consultation?
I guess talking to the likes of the Hotel Association, I mean, will people come and make cases to you
It will
as
be
minister?
addressed on a case-by-case basis, depending on the project. So when you look at a project, the things that will be taken under consideration, some of which are considered now, is the size of the project, physical size of the project, the monetary amount involved, the impact that it will have on the Bermuda economy, the economic impact, and these are things that are in place now, and we'll expand on some of those.
Has the industry changed? I mean, we have the Tourism Investment Act, which seems to have some pretty wide-ranging discretion in it. Is it just, I guess, has the industry changed? Has it become more expensive to need this type of thing?
Well, we have seen increases in the cost of construction and other items as a result of supply chain issues in the last couple of years. So there has been an increase in expenses.
Gotcha.
Particularly on the construction side, and that's what we're talking about. And when we look at investment, people are expanding, updating, renovating, building anew. So we have to take the overall cost into consideration and be more flexible. We also have to be competitive. You know, when we have investment dollars out there, they have other jurisdictions that they can invest that money. So we want to maintain our competitiveness, because if we have a newer product, then we lose our ability to compete with other jurisdictions that have newer product.
Was it prompted at all by the GenCom plans for the Fairmont Southampton?
As I said, things will be considered on an individual basis. We have had inquiries, and the standout one, obviously, was the Southampton Hotel.
I wanted to ask on that too, if you can. GenCom have plans to build, I gather, potentially hundreds of homes on Fairmont Southampton, not Southampton, on the land there, including on the golf course. Do you agree with that?
Our remit was to provide concessions and give consideration to concessions on the existing building, and that's as far as we took our remit.
Do you know?
Any other plans would have to go through the existing planning process under a different ministry.
Are you able to say if we're going to see
you would have to direct that to
GenCom
that particular
deal by the end of the year?
So.
Righto, sir. I wanted to ask about the BTA. When do you expect a new CEO there to be named? It seems like the search is taking a while. I know under the Act that appointment is done in consultation with yourself.
So once the board are in a position, or they deem themselves to be in a position whereby they have someone in mind, or they wish to hire a new CEO or appoint someone, they are required, as you pointed out, under the Act to consult with the minister, and I look forward to that consultation.
Hasn't happened yet. They are apparently aiming to fill the vacant post internally. Do you agree with that, or would you welcome it being thrown open to a
The
wider
Act is
search?
quite clear on what the requirements are for the CEO position, and I'm sure the board is well aware of the requirements of the Act.
Last one on BTA, we had someone get appointed in September as the director of global communications at the BTA, Mr. Anderson. Do you know if that position was advertised in Bermuda?
Responsibilities for personnel don't lie with the minister. They lie with the board under Section 4.1 of the Act. The authority is governed by a board, And under Section 6.3, the CEO or the interim CEO in the current scenario is responsible for all personnel decisions that include hiring, promoting, discipline, and termination.
Got you. Just a few more. So, we heard from Minister Ferbert yesterday that no Boston flight was coming soon. He did highlight that as a concern for himself. I guess just on the tourism angle, can you talk about what work your ministry is doing to getting that one back?
Well, if you look at what faces the industry, we have a limitation on hotel beds right now. We talk about the amendments to the Tourism Investment Act. That's the reason we wish to make those changes to incentivize investment, i.e. increasing the number of beds available. That feeds into conversations with the airlines, because if we have more beds, we can bring in more people. We need those flights, so we can have that conversation with the airlines. So as Minister Ferbert indicated yesterday, it's his priority 1, his priority 2, and I believe his priority 3. So I'm confident the minister will honor his word and put that effort into restoring some sort of connection, direct connection between here and Boston.
I've got a last one here for you, sir. And this is to do with the travel authorization form that we heard so much about. It's gone. It's going earlier than we expected it to go. Are you relieved to be getting that news?
It's good that we have that distraction out of the way, because we can then focus on the real issues, the long-term issues that continue to sort of impact our ability to recover as far as that industry, and that is the number of hotel beds, the airlift to the island, and our ability to move our guests around, i.e. transportation on island once we get visitors here. So those remain a focus of the government, and we are looking to do what we can through such access to Tourism Investment Act and others and other ministries to address those 3 issues. And obviously the BTA's responsibility is for advertising and bringing people here. So as a government, we have to ensure that we have the hotel beds that they can that they can stay in, and the airlift to bring them here. So
hoteliers didn't like the travel authorization form. It seemed that way to me. Was it an impediment on tourism?
That remains to be seen, because we just came out of a month, i.e. October, where hotels were full.
True.
So, but as I said, with that out of the way, we can, when I say we, the government, the BTA, and our industry partners can focus on the 3 issues that I just highlighted, which are the things that continue to plague and hamper our ability to be more competitive and to attract more and increase the numbers of visitors to the island that are coming in through the airlift.
Appreciate you, sir. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Minister.
Good afternoon.
I'll stay with TA since we're just left off on that. From our recollection, around $20 million in revenue was projected to be collected from the TA form. I wondered whether or how the ministry intends to cover that shortfall, that because it's ending 4 months earlier than expected.
You're assuming there's a shortfall because of the positive performance of tourism numbers. We are anticipating, according to information provided by the Ministry of Finance, that with the early ending of the TA, that number will finish somewhere between 23 and 24 million. And
you're happy with that figure?
That's the number that was provided by the Ministry of Finance. They would have that information.
Sure. Interesting. Do you have any plans on how to use that extra $4 million?
That would be a Ministry of Finance decision.
Fair enough. Thank you. Looking at the BTA, so the authority was something established. It wasn't necessarily that the PLP wanted. I wondered whether you wanted to keep the BTA in its current state.
The government have no immediate plans to change the existing structure and arrangement around the BTA.
Okay. Looking at Fairmount Southampton, so So in concessions are being increased from 10 to 15 years. That doesn't happen in a vacuum. What kind of investment do they expect on top of the Fairmount Southampton agreement?
I don't understand your question. Is that specific to Southampton Princess or in general? Because you seem to link the two together.
To Fairmount.
Can you repeat the question then?
What kind of investment is expected on top of the Fairmount Southampton concessions that were granted?
I really don't understand your question. They have indicated what they, in our consideration of that specific act, they indicated that it will be in excess of 300 million that they would be investing in that project. Any other physical plant, that's another hotel, for example, if they're bringing anything, that's totally separate and apart from the Southampton.
Sure.
So each property is considered on its individual merits.
I mean, what sort of concessions are developers looking for in Bermuda specifically?
Well, we have one of the highest costs of living. What contributes to that is the cost of bringing in goods, and in our construction area, we have to bring in considerable amounts of product. And so construction and the actual operational costs in Bermuda tend to be higher than in other jurisdictions. So we have to take that into consideration and allow the concessions as prescribed in the Tourism Investment Act. Those are the only concessions that are allowed, the concessions in the Tourism Investment Act. And you can read that. It's one line.
Sure. I mean, is there a chance for any concessions that are, absolutely off the table that will never be considered?
I can't answer that at this time.
Okay. Any plans to add additional concessions to that act?
That's the whole purpose. We will look at that as part of the amendments that we're looking to bring in this legislative session.
Right. So nothing's off the table in that case?
I will not say that nothing's off the table, but we are looking to amend it to maintain or to be more competitive with jurisdictions to our south.
Sure. Thank you. In terms of marketing within the BTA, will there be any plans to advertise on televisions, perhaps in the U.S. East Coast, to expand our reach? I know the PGA and triathlon does a good job of doing that, but I wonder if there'd be consistent commercialization on the East Coast.
This is the minister's personal position. I was sent an article that highlighted that it said Bermuda had become complacent. So, and that's why we've lost our way. So, it is my goal, or I would like to see personally as a minister, that anyone who is involved in the decision-making process in any household in our target market that has an influence on where they go on vacation should know about Bermuda, and whatever means it takes to reach them, whether it's through television or other means, I think we should explore it. And that's the minister's position, so personal position.
Thank
not
you.
the government's, not the BTA's.
All right. You also mentioned in your statement some amendments to intellectual property rights and PADI requests information. I wondered why that came under your remit. Are you able to?
Because I'm Tourism and Cabinet Office, that falls under Cabinet Office.
Thank you. And with regards to intellectual property, are there any disputes that you're aware of that people might be interested in, actually looking forward to these changes?
When you look at the age of some of those acts, one I think I said was 1930. So we have to, business has evolved, technology has evolved, so we have to update our legislation, and that's the primary reason that, and some of the requirements that are placed on us as an overseas jurisdiction, encouraging international business to domicile here, have changed. So we have to update our laws to keep pace with that.
Sure.
And that's the primary driving factor.
Will there be any clauses for these changes being retroactive for businesses that may want to?
I can't answer that at this time, but all things will be considered.
I think that covers everything. Thank you.
All right, thank you all. That is the final question. Minister